I've had 3 academic comebacks, going from an E to an A star just to drop back down to an E and then back up to an A star again. In my third and final academic comeback, I was constantly hitting 80% plus for every single one of my exams, with some of them even reaching 98%. So these are my 3 mistakes that I constantly made. Firstly, I spent too much time making notes. I constantly made notes, highlighting notes, copy pasting my textbook, and then making my own notes from that. That takes way too long, and I'm not even going to use my notes again anyway, so what I did was instead I made it into mind map. I prefer mind maps over notes because mind maps are kind of like easy to capture immediately, and I know exactly where everything is in my mind map since I made it myself, and I can kind of screenshot it in my head and just memorize it that way. My second mistake was my mindset. I constantly thought that I was an idiot, I cannot do this, blah blah blah. Especially after going from an A star back down to an E, I thought that it was just luck at that point. But in reality, it's just because I took it lightly because I was like, oh my god, I'm such a genius. And then I stopped studying. You should never overestimate yourself. It is always better to underestimate so that you can plan and have contingency for when things don't go well. For example, let's say you're learning about photosynthesis in biology and you're like, this is such a simple topic. And then after that, when you actually come to study it, you're stuck with it for 2 weeks when you only gave yourself 2 weeks to study it. And then you're 2 weeks behind on everything else and everything's messed up and then you don't know what to do after that. So what I do is underestimate myself and then give myself an extra 3 weeks of contingency. Having a contingency also prevents panic, and that is super important. And the third and final mistake is thinking that you only have one perfect study technique that works for every subject. That will never ever ever happen, because even for me right now in my final academic comeback where I've kept it for 4 years, the only reason why I've kept it for 4 years long is because I have different study techniques for different subjects. And I don't even just like have one study technique for like chemistry, for example. I have 4 different study techniques for each subject. So in total, I'm using like about 16 different study techniques. It is okay to constantly rotate study techniques, keep trying new things, use different techniques for different subjects is super important, because then you're covering all the bases. And just in reality, some study techniques don't work for some things. For example, flashcards don't really work for chemistry, but they do for biology. Yeah, don't make the same mistakes I did, and all the best for your academic comeback this year. See you tomorrow. Bye.